A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to week number 3, recorded lecture number 9. Today in this lecture, we are going to discuss culture in communication. We will see various ways how culture can help us or how culture can create problems, not problems, but difference of opinion in communication. So let us begin with the culture. Every country or region within a country has a unique common heritage, joint experience, or shared learning. This shared background produces the culture of a region, country, or society. For communication purposes, culture may be defined as the complex system of values, traits, morals, and customs shared by a society. Now, if we see like at our national level, so one, we have a national culture, right? Then we should say Alhamdulillah, because Pakistan is a multicultural and multilinguistic country. So we have a number of cultures here. For example, a few common ones are linked with the provinces like Sindhi culture, Punjabi culture, Pashto culture, Balochi culture, and then KPK culture, or maybe northern areas and Kashmir and all that. So these cultures, we are Alhamdulillah a culturally diverse and rich country, right? But if we do not understand and respect each other's culture well, these cultures become a barrier or a problem for interaction and communication. But if we understand the culture, basic spirit, and if we give importance to it, it can become, this diversity can become an asset for us. So let's move forward. Culture teaches people how to behave, and it conditions their reactions. So that's why behavior of people coming from one culture can be little different from behavior of people coming from another culture, because their difference in culture may change their behavior as well. Now let's move towards characteristics of culture. The first characteristic of culture is learned, right? Like, no one has culture by birth, or it's not genetically transferred, rather it is learned. For example, as we have already discussed, that rules, values, and attitudes of a culture are not inherent, right? It's not that a child by birth has the cultural rules and cultural values. It's only that the child learns from the society, from home, from schooling, and of course wherever somebody lives. Number two, they are learned and passed from generation to generation. For example, in Arab cultures, conversations are held in close proximity, sometimes nose to nose. But in Western cultures, if a person stands too close, one may react as if his or her personal space is violated, right? So we should not expect everyone to follow our culture. Yeah, this is something very important that must be considered. Quite often, when we come across people from other cultures and we expect them to behave the way we do. For example, we are from Sindh, right? And if there is a student who comes from, say, KPK or Balochistan or Punjab, right? And he or she was brought up in a different setting, say, if we are from urban areas, he or she was brought up in a rural setup, right? And their cultural values were different, and obviously the learning would be different. But we should not be expecting everyone to behave I have been groomed to behave, right? Because my cultural settings could have been different from cultural settings of people coming from other parts of the country. And of course, if we go beyond the country, if we go to another country, when you will be required to work in international market, where you work with people coming around the world, or you may have to go to different parts of the world. Obviously, you should not be expecting people in different countries and different parts of the world to behave the way you behave, right? Brought up and their cultural values can be different from your cultural values. Sometimes they can even be contrary to your cultural values. So, being professionals, we must keep it in mind that we should not expect everyone to follow our culture, because his or her culture can be different. Well, moving towards the next characteristic, that is, cultures are inherently logical, right? Like the rules in any culture originated or reinforce that culture's values and beliefs. These cultures do not develop over days or months, rather, it is over, decades, I should say, right? Over decades, tens and hundreds of years, that these cultures develop, and they according to needs in that particular area, according to the values of that particular areas, right? Secondly, they act as normative forces. They are based on the norms of the people, live there. Norms of the region, these norms can be norms of the religion, these norms can have some other values as well. For example, in Japan, the original Barbie doll was a failure for many reasons, one of which was her toothy smile, because in Japan, exposing one's teeth is not only abuse but also aggressive. Now, see, like for example, this Barbie example, that was all right for a Barbie with a toothy smile in US or in different parts of the West, right? But in Japanese culture, it's of course specifically linked to their culture, that they do not smile. So these cultures, for example, when we talk about food and clothes, right? And quite often, we means an average person or an average Pakistani seems to be making fun of the other culture. For example, talking about how somebody dresses up. Like usually people from uh, rural areas, you would even see them that they wear, suppose joggers on shalwar kameez, and while they come to cities and quite youngsters like students of your age, or they make fun of them, calling them that, sometimes using these negative words like pendu or something like that, right? Because of their, in according to you, there is mismatch in their shalwar kameez and then joggers. Yes, that's not a formal attire. I don't say that's a formal attire. But if you ever go to a rural area, say if you have to walk maybe 1 or 2 miles, because you may not get, Kareem or Uber or Chinchi to reach to your home, right? So you may have to walk for a mile or so. And if you have to walk on a way, on a path that is uneven, right? There can be stones there, there can be, remaining parts of the crops there. They can be hard enough to tear your shoes and even enter your feet. Now it's because of that particular requirement that they require such shoes which can protect their feet, which can be comfortable, right? And so on and so forth. Similarly, when we talk about food, for example, if you are a Karachite, and quite famous food in Karachi, like Nahari is quite famous food, or Halim is quite famous food, or biryani is there. But you cannot expect somebody coming from other parts of Pakistan to like Nahari or Halim or biryani as much as you do, because in their culture there could have been different foods that they have been having since their childhood, right? So this, secondly, as I have said, there can be logics in food also. Like usually in colder areas, you would find people like more meat and uh, such sort of food that protect them from the weather, right? Like you could see usage of coffee, usage of chocolate more in cold areas, right? But if somebody takes too much coffee and too much chocolate in hotter areas, the excessive amount, that can be even harmful for them, because that food is actually for the colder areas, and the regions where that food is consumed more, those cultures, there is logic behind it, because it taking more coffee keeps their body warm, and that is required in that particular cultural or geographical setting. So that's why we say that cultures are inherently logical. There is always some logic, whether we agree with that logic or we do not agree, that's another point. But instead of, just ignoring cultures, we should maybe think about the logic that may be in a particular. Okay, moving forward towards uh, the next three, that is, culture is the basis of self identity and community, right? Who we are, what we believe. So, I mean, there is nothing like that we should ignore our values. They are actually our identity, like our religious culture, our national culture, our regional cultures. They actually tell us who we are, right? They are our identity. If we ignore them altogether, then it means we lose our identity. Now, we must not consider our culture as, you know, a source of superiority over others. Well, there is no such point that you know, my culture is more superior to the other culture, right? Well, this does not mean, it is not the direct meaning of this point, but only the point meaning is that they are our identity, right? Because of our culture, we are known to be Asians, we are known to be Pakistanis, we are known to be Muslims, or we are known to be, you know, like within Pakistan, Sindhis or Punjabis and Balochs, and well, there is no harm in having our cultural identity as long as we do not make it a source of hatred, or we do not make it a source of, we do not consider a source of superiority, that, you know, well, because I belong to this culture, so I'm superior to that culture. That makes the problems and that creates the hurdles, of course, that must be avoided. Otherwise, culture is the basis of self identity and also, you know, community identity. Okay. Uh, characteristic number four, culture combines the visible and invisible. Like in Japan, for instance, harmony with the environment is important. Thus, when attending a flower show, a woman would wear a dress with pastel rather than primary colors to avoid detracting from the beauty of the flowers. See, now that is part of their culture, that they would be wearing the culture, the dresses, women that are matching with the flowers, so that you know, they do not, their dresses do not attract the audience, you know, and they do not detract them from the flowers show that have been prepared or that have been organized. For example, in India, people avoid stepping on ants or insects because they believe in incarnation and are careful about all forms of life. Incarnation means rebirth, you know, according to their belief that, you know, they will come back to this world, rebirth, and their rebirth can be in shape of an ant or another insect, you know. That's why, like, this is an example I've taken from a published book. So, uh, you know, these are invisible characteristics. Similarly, like, we can have many local examples, as I have covered in the previous example also. Like, I forgot to cover one example in the last characteristic, last slide, that was about food. For example, if you go to hotter parts of our country like interior Sindh and even interior Punjab, you will see that they use more of lassi there, right? And that food is more common there, because you know, uh, it's very hot in there and they have to work in the field and they directly get exposed to the sun, so they require that, right? Maybe that's less required in urban areas. So, similarly, the different sort of even food, for example, like last example I gave you, that, you know, in colder areas they use more meat, right? Because you know, their body requires there. Again, that's both visible and invisible. There are, as I have already said, that there are many things these cultures develop over hundreds of years. So there are many logics that we cannot understand, but those cultures have in them. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to week number 3, recorded lecture number 9. Well, today in this lecture, we are going to discuss culture in communication. we will see various ways how culture can help us, or how culture can create problems, not problems, but difference of opinion in communication. Well, there are these three basic concepts that definitely help us understand the culture and respect them. Number one, it is a stereotype. A stereotype is an oversimplified behavioral pattern applied uncritically to a group, right? That, for example, you came across one Chinese and you did not have a good experience with him or her. Now you apply that experience with one Chinese with the whole Chinese nation, right? Of course, that single observation cannot be applied to all. Like stereotypes are fixed and rigid. Once you have thought of that, okay, Chinese are like this, or you had a bad experience with a linguistic group, say Pathans, so we start labeling Pathans are like this, or Sindhis are like this, or Punjabis are like this, or Baloch are like this. So this stereotyping is when we do not have enough interaction, and just on the basis of very limited experience and exposure, you know, we create uncritically, we create some label, and then we attach that label to the whole culture, right? So stereotypes are fixed and rigid, although they may be exaggerated and overgeneralized beliefs. When applied to groups of people, stereotypes are not always entirely false. Obviously, they are not entirely false. Often they contain a grain of truth, right? They do contain a grain of truth, but that truth cannot be overgeneralized to the whole nation, to the whole linguistic group, to the whole people of the region, right? So that has maybe very little truth in it, but of course we must be careful not to overgeneralize it to the whole group or to the whole region people or to the whole nation. Like prejudice is when a stereotype develops into a rigid attitude and when it is based on erroneous beliefs, Erroneous beliefs are beliefs that are wrong, mistaken, that have error, or perceptions that, that it should be called prejudice. Unfortunately, quite often, usually people become victim of this prejudice that they pick up one or two negative characteristics of a culture and then they always label people, everyone coming from that culture with those negative traits that one experienced in a person, that one had in a personal experience. So we must be very careful that we should not be prejudiced. We must not have prejudice against a particular culture or against a particular group of people just on the basis of some uncritical and overgeneralized things, right? Now the next concept is prototype. Prototype is a mental representation based on general characteristics that are not fixed and rigid but rather open to definition. Prototype is, we would say, prototype are dynamic and change with the fresh experience. And prototypes based on objective observations usually have a considerable amount of truth in them, hence useful in studying culture. Now, as compared to stereotype, in case of prototype, prototypes are usually general characteristics of a particular group of people, and again, they are general. They cannot be applied 100%. But since these characteristics are general and they are common observations usually made by a number of people, right? And usually these observations are held for a long time period, that for uh, 10, 20 years, 30 years, people have been observing who interact with that group or culture. That okay, fine, this culture has these characteristics. Those characteristics can be both positive and negative, but usually these prototypes are general characteristics that are observed objectively by people, and that usually that usually are true also. But once again, not necessarily that a prototype represents uh, every individual of that culture, and it represents, in 100% the way they are, right? Now, bridging the gap, since in this global village today, uh, almost every professional has to interact with people coming from other countries, coming from other cultures, and if you are working for an international market, like uh, some of you might be working in different countries in future, so you will come across people coming from different countries, coming from different cultures, coming from different backgrounds, coming from different religions. So a professional is must be aware of these basic points, that fine, I'll be required to work with the people with different nationals, with people with different attitude, different cultural values, and different thoughts. So we must learn how to bridge the gap among cultures, how to bridge the gap among the changes that different people may come with, right? First thing is developing cultural competence often involves changing attitude. We must change our attitude, right? We must not have negative thoughts about other cultures. For example, having negative attitudes. Arabs are like this, Chinese are like this, Europeans are like this, Americans are like this, right? So we need to have a neutral attitude, right? Well, good and bad people exist in every culture, in every country, in every religion, in every group. So overall we must first of all change our attitudes, that there are people who were brought up in different cultural setting, they can have different cultural values. So I won't force everyone uh, to be like me. Of course they cannot be. Second, it's tolerance. Tolerance is empathy, which means trying to see the world through another's eyes, helps you to be more tolerant and less judgmental. Instead of seeing everything from your own perspective, that how do I like this thing, or how I do not like this thing, that would be very subjective, right? Rather, what is tolerance? Seeing things from others' perspective. Okay, fine. This is how I view things, but what about others? People coming from other culture, how do they view things? How people coming from other countries, how do they have a look at different things? Then it's avoiding ethnocentrism. So, avoiding ethnocentrism is the belief in the superiority of one's race, uh, tends to cause use to judge others by our own values. When we start believing my race is superior and other race is inferior, for example, unfortunately, this white and colored race difference, unfortunately, those who believe that people who have white skin complexion, there are some people unfortunately who are called racist. They believe that people with white skin are superior than people with colored people. Colored people are like people with black skin complexion, or people with yellow skin complexion, or like the skin complexion we Asians have and Africans have and other parts of the world have. Now, if somebody has this in mind, that my race is superior to all, obviously the person will be less tolerant. Obviously, the person would not feel comfortable working with people coming from different races, from different cultures. So, we have to avoid this uh, ethnocentrism, that my culture is the best, my race is the best, we are the superior people and rest of the people are inferior. So this attitude creates problem in professional life. Well, non-verbal communication, well, while working in different culture, one must be very careful about non-verbal communication, right? For example, non-verbal skills are much more difficult to learn. The same non-verbal can have different meanings in different cultures, such as thumb up. Yeah, we have to be very careful. For example, a simple sign, thumb up, that we usually give for perfect and all right, is actually an abuse in Germany. So now, if you are in Germany and you use this normal thumb up sign, so for them that is an abusive language. So when we have to learn how nonverbal communicates in that different culture. For example, if you are required to work in China for some time, then you should be learning their cultural values, that that do not annoy them. Or if you are working in Arab countries, then you need to know what nonverbals can have negative meaning, and you should avoid them. Like the messages sent by body language and the way we arrange time and space have always been open to interpretation, right? Such as raised eyebrow mean that your boss doubts your statement, or just that he or she is seriously considering it. Because eyebrows can be raised in both ways, when somebody gives too much importance, and when somebody uh, maybe ironically giving that importance. For example, a space issue, I recall reading a case study that in a business meeting, there was an Arab businessman and an American businessman. According to Arab culture, when they have closer friendship, the personal space decreases. So the businessman was trying to get closer to the American businessman because he wanted to have future business ties. Whereas on the other hand, the American businessman, according to their culture, if somebody violates their personal space, that's say around 2 feet or so, then they feel threatened. So ultimately, they had misunderstanding. The American felt that the Arab was entering his personal space, and he got annoyed. On the other hand, actually, the Arab was trying to show that he is going to have a closer business relationship. So like space had different meaning for Arab businessmen, and it had different meaning for the American businessman. So we need to be very careful in our non-verbals while communicating with people coming from other cultures. Well, in Western culture, people silence as a negative trait. If you are silent, that is a negative trait. It suggests rejection, unhappiness, depression, regret, embarrassment, or ignorance. On the other hand, the Japanese admire silence and consider it a key to success. The same silence has almost contrary meaning in Japan and in the West. Okay, thank you very much. Uh, well, thank you very much. That's it for today's lecture. Inshallah, see you in the next live session, and we will have, inshallah, a different topic in our next recorded lecture as well. So, take good care of you. Thank you very much, and see you, inshallah, in the next lecture.